A book and a bev. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A Book and a Bev. Drum roll. Georgia is present. Ellie, Briony, Claire. We're back. It's technically not Trauma Tuesday, but it may as well be. We're back with another Colleen Hoover book, guys. Ugly Love. Ugly Love.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
what are you doing to us, Georgia?
Sorry. Oh, yeah. Look, this is another Georgia recommendation because if it's Colleen Hoover, it's likely come from me. So this week, because it's another heavy week, I am drinking CC and Coke because I need something strong. So bourbon it is, you know?
I am I'm channeling the book and all the orange juice that is in this book, which was very unexpected.
Yeah.
And I'm having a mimosa.
Hell yeah.
I'm going for a nice sparkling wine.
Oh, geez, that's a full glass too.
That is a
Jeez.
We're ready. We're here.
I'm also on white wine tonight because I needed something easily to knock back so I can dull the aching of my heart from this fucking book.
Look, Georgia, lucky I like crying because after it ends with us, I was scared. I was like, trust no man, fall in love with no dick. No one can be trusted. And then this book happened and it's a goodie. It's a lot. I think it is a lot less traumatic for me than It Ends With Us, but it was just as beautiful a journey. There were definitely some copy and paste moments in this from It Ends With Us, but I'm a Sarah J. Maas fan. I can't complain about a copy and paste. But overall, I didn't hate that too much. I did love throughout the book the intentional mirroring between the flashbacks and like they'd have the sentences that were the same in real time in the flashbacks. I loved that. I also had a color code system for this book with red flags for I was scared and green is for full steam ahead. So red light, green light is going to be a thing for me. Prepare yourselves. And also, Georgia is Tate. You cannot change my mind.
100%.
I got that vibe.
Yeah. It was the slamming the hand in the door thing because like like I'd do it.
That and I think it was the
Oh
V.
God.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Can't tell me it's not you.
This book, my lordy, I honestly couldn't put it down. And I think it's definitely become one of my favorite books to read now. Like, I genuinely really liked it. And I have no doubt that I'll actually read it again. Although I didn't necessarily love Miles the whole time, I did love the ending. And for me, there was a more entertaining storyline than It Ends With Us. But there was definitely a lot of similarities, as Briony has said. There were also a lot of points whilst reading in the book where my mind pointed out things where I've gone, oh my God, this is a Georgia moment. And I was like, oh my God, Georgia would love this. This would be in her series. It just kept popping up constantly.
Yes,
Friends recognize friends kink.
They do.
Yes, we appreciate that. I also really enjoyed this book. It was an easy read and I finished it in 2 days. And that says a lot given that I have 2 children and no spare time. Were there parts that were a little cliche? Yeah. Where the first part of the book struggled to get me like really into it? Kinda. But there was juicy smut and I was here for that. And this book ripped my heart out. 100%. I just, it is something about babies. You can't go there with me because you will kill me and I'm dead. I can't even speak. I'm not articulating what I want to say because I am that destroyed. I will say I wasn't fully sold on the romance of the book. I don't quite understand how Tate ended up so smitten with Miles because he treated her like absolute shit and like, well, yeah, he has his trauma. But I kind of also think a lot of the issues in this book could have been solved with therapy a lot earlier.
100%.
But then there wouldn't have been a book. So I still loved it.
Yeah.
Also, background for everyone, while the rest of us had finished the book before Ellie, we're sending messages being like, we need to protect Ellie. We need to protect a circle around Ellie while she reads this book.
Guys, I was sitting on my couch. My partner came out and is like, are you okay? I can hear you from the other room. I'm like, I'm not.
You just throw the book at him.
I literally woke my baby up and took her into my bed and made her sleep with me because I was like, Soz, come on with me.
Oh, look, again, this is another Georgia recommendation. So you know I love this book. I think it was beautiful. It was sexy. It was intriguing. It was heartbreaking. I was just feeling something every step of the way through this book. I just love this book, and it's not my favorite. It Ends With Us is definitely my favorite, and you know, the more books I read of Colleen Hoover, it's kind of makes it way further down my list. It's not necessarily what I think is her best work, but it is such a good book nonetheless. Like, even if it's not one of my top favorites of hers, it's still one of my top favorite books anyway. You know what I mean? So it was so good. So I have no words. I love you, Colleen Hoover.
This might be controversial. I didn't think Miles was that much of a dick.
Really?
You dated in your past, Briony.
He's got some problems, but I mean,
Treat him mean, keep him keen, I suppose. I don't know.
I don't know. I probably need therapy. It's fine. First read through, this first bit, we meet our main gal. I just assume she's got really big boobs.
Yeah.
That's the vibe I got. Girl is packing.
She's
Love
hot.
that for her. Hope she's got a good bra.
So we meet Dylan in the lift with Tate.
Ugh.
And I initially thought he was going to be the main love interest. And I was just thinking, no, because he's just a slimy grub who's clearly married. He's just staring at her boobs the whole time. And but to counter that, we also meet Cap, who is my favorite character, hands down. He's this old man who presses the buttons on the elevator, and Tate ends up befriending him throughout the book. And he's my fave. I love him. I literally wrote a note next to his name saying, he better not die. Because I really thought the book could have gone that way.
Yeah, it's Colleen Hoover's book. You never know what's going to happen. So
No one's
Do not kill
safe.
Cap.
no one's safe. For a little bit of background, Tate is moving in with her brother Corbin, who lives in this apartment complex. Her brother's a pilot. She's a nurse, and also like a studying like nurse.
She's leveling up. Love that for
Yeah,
her.
leveling up. Love that.
Better
for her.
yourself.
And I just love her from the get-go, because even her interaction with Dylan, it was like, fuck off, you're
No.
married, like
Mhm.
back off. And then her interacting with her brother, because obviously her brother is away, and there's this drunk guy on her doorstep, on her brother's doorstep.
I'm like, move, bitch, get out the way. I did not care. Get in the apartment. Go to bed. Did not care.
And then she's on the phone with him like, fuck's this guy? Like, what's going on? And then she's just like, you're going in my bra, because she's got to try to get in. And so she puts the phone in her bra, and he gags, and you and I just picture like me and my brother, you know, that's like what we would do, like the interaction, the banter between them. It made me love
I'm
them.
wondering if that's why I disconnected with the brother-sister relationship, because I don't have a brother. So I was just like, it's a lot.
I mean, I just love the fact that she's trying to get in this door and she uses the key. Obviously, he's leaning against it. There's a whole issue with that. But I just love how she drops the key, and when she runs into the apartment, she just leaves it there.
And she slams the door on this guy's hand. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a
lot.
lot. It's a
But
lot.
also, if you're trying to keep someone out, why would you leave the key in the hallway?
I just picture panic. He's grabbed her ankle. She's like, oh, the fuck, shit. But also he's hot. So I'd probably be like, you want to touch my ankle, baby? That's fine.
God damn it, Georgia.
Again, Tate is she's just my everything. And like her just being the way that she was with her brother, and then going and being the way that she was when she finds out that Miles is actually Corbin's next door neighbor in the apartment across the hall. And he's having just a really bad night, and she takes him inside, puts him on Corbin's couch, and he's crying. He's an emotional mess. He's so drunk, absolutely plastered. And he's crying about Rachel, and, you know, he's saying he's so sorry, Rachel, for what he did. And the quote that I took is, whatever he did to Rachel, at least he loves her enough to regret it, because he was just sobbing. Like the crying when you're dead silent and it's just tears.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, never thought of Tate this entire book as like a sweet, soft person. Like, not like Lily was soft and this beautiful soul, and Tate was never that for me. Tate was sharp and witty and over everyone's shit before it started, and I love her.
And I think she came across really relatable as well with her interactions with him. Like, she's so nervous and awkward, and like everything he says she goes all gooey over. I'm like, yeah, that is very relatable. When the hot guy shows interest in you and you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, literally. And then throughout this book, basically each chapter is present time and past time. Present time is always from Tate's point of view, and then past is from young Miles.
How old is he? 18? in the flashbacks? Yeah,
Yeah.
18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got Miles being this guy in high school being like, oh my God, the new girl's here and I'm going to show her around school. And he's like getting ready to send like a photo of the new girl to his friend to talk about if she's hot or not. And I was like, ugh, men. But then he sees new girl Rachel and you're like, oh no, that's the name he was just crying over on the couch. Oh no, absolutely not. And he's like talking about how hot she is and how like his world is just, he's completely just ruined by her. But like, honestly, what teenage boy looks at a hot girl and goes, she's going to have all my babies? That is not a normal teenage boy reaction.
No.
Like, let me stick my dick in it.
Doing my notes, I was like, oh no.
My favourite quote in this section is when he goes, I smell her subtly. She notices anyway. Okay. Weird.
So creepy.
I feel like there's a lot of quotes in this where they're just like, you just met a dude, like chill. One I thought was kind of funny was, I also want to add, for the sake of all the other guys in the classroom, that Rachel is not theirs, she's mine. And I'm like, mate, not loving the possessiveness.
He was just staking his claim right off the bat.
He was like, instantly, this is the gal for me.
Something that I really love about just the way in which Colleen Hoover writes this book is how as soon as he meets Rachel, it turns into poetry, which is so fucking weird. But the chapter, it goes into like middle indented, like old poetry style. And it's like repeating words like Rachel, Rachel, Rachel. You're going to have my babies, Rachel. You're going to do this. I'm going to fall in love with you, Rachel. You know, all these, like, it's the way in which Colleen writes it. And it comes back in the end as well, which we'll get to. It's like that in his brain, it's like on repeat. It's like
she's taken over his mind and he is just completely smitten.
Yeah.
Then we're back in like present time. We've met Rachel and you're like, oh no, why was this grown man crying about this woman? He loved her so much in high school. What could have gone wrong? So then we get back to this point and like Tate and Miles are doing this, like she wakes up and he's over her and he's like, what did you do to my hand? She's like, I'm asleep, fuck off, which I love that energy. Never wake a girl when she's sleeping. I think one of my favorite moments is she's like, can you just do me a favor and just take a step back? And surprisingly he does. And then she's like, I keep my eyes locked with his until the bedroom door slams in his face. I was obsessed. I loved it. But also Tate slamming the door in his face gives me serious favour throwing the shoe at Reese vibes.
In this first interaction, I was like, he's an asshole. But there's something, you know what I mean? There's something there. The interaction, it gave me like he was being an asshole and she just wasn't taking it. And I think that's why he was probably more interested in her than... You know, because usually girls run away from that shit. But she was just like, you know what? I'm going to slam this door on your face. Fuck you. Which,
and go back to bed.
All for it. There was just this heat. There was this undeniable heat between them.
He's literally like the embodiment of he's a dick, but what a dick he has.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And look, one of the issues I had with this book is that in the flashbacks, we find out like Miles is all like, Rachel, you're going to have my babies, Rachel. And then his dad was like, well, what if you were step-siblings? And, you know, they're not biologically related. But there's a whole genre of porn for step-siblings, and I was not about it. There's this whole thing being like, help me, step-bro, I'm stuck. And the whole time I'm reading this book and I'm like, no. And every time there's a flashback, I'm like, help me, step-bro, I'm stuck.
Look, I don't even think that part of the story was necessary. Why did they have to be related? They still could have had all of those moments and have been, I guess they wouldn't have been able to live together, but everything else could have still happened.
Yeah, it was kind of like an unnecessary little sprinkle of like incest in there.
Colleen was like, okay, editor, we need to get some more people reading my books. What is trending on Pornhub right now? Step-siblings. And then, you know, so we're having this thing where like Tate and Miles are trying to act like they're like, oh, I don't like it. Oh, I'm rude, but oh, you're hot type. You know, the tension building. I'm very much about it. I'm like, cool. When? Save the date.
When? Where? I'll be there.
Yep. With binoculars. It's fine. But so Tate comes home one night from work in her scrubs and there's the man we all hate, Dylan, and there's Miles, and there's this new person who she does not know. I want to say Ian, but not her brother. And she's done with this shit. She does not want to borrow any of this. But in this whole interaction, you know, Dylan, the creepy fucker, is being a creepy fucker. And she's like, I need to study. Why are you fuckers here? Type thing. And I don't know why. I was like, maybe I'm still on red alert and I'm not trusting men, but Miles was like, you need to study at my place. And she was like, it's not a request, it's a demand. And I don't know why. I was like, no, but then he did this thing where he slid his apartment key into the front of her jean pocket. And I mean, that probably should have been a red flag for me, but instead I was like, green light.
Because his head was near your pussy.
And like, she's reacting, which again, this is probably one of the first bits. I was like, Georgia, is that you? She's like, oh my God, like he did that. And I felt that in my front pocket. In a lot of metaphorical and physical ways. But then we're back to, so we've got red light, he's like, go study at my house. Green light, I'm going to put my key in the front jean pocket and nearly touch your pussy. Red light, when she starts doing his dishes.
Yeah, odd.
Green light, he then comes back and how does he make orange juice sexy? I have questions. I don't get this. I don't like fruits. I was very confused. But I was also like, why is this spicy? But then we were back to red light, was the whole Miles doesn't want me to like Dylan. I love that Miles doesn't want me to like Dylan. And I mean, fuck me, that's a pick me girl, copy and paste right there.
It is.
Done.
But you know what did it for me? The fact that his apartment was basically empty, apart from the walls lined with books.
Damn straight.
That's the kind of man we want in our life.
I want an emotionally distant book reader.
That's it.
Although there were like 2 quotes in this part where I was just like, this is Georgia to a T. When Miles just like, I don't care if you drink my juice, Tate. I was just like, that line.
Again,
where to fucking go?
How is orange juice sexy?
Like, just if now, I'm struggling with words right now, okay? I don't know
honestly,
what is that sentence that, I don't care if you drink my juice, Tate. I'm like, I'll drink the fucking juice. I'll do it.
Don't need to tell me
I'm
twice.
just like, glug, glug.
Glug, glug, indeed.
But there was another one where it was like a guy folding his laundry while flaunting his abs and being a pilot is seriously impressive. I'm like, yes, Georgia.
All of the above. Thank you. My love language, it's acts of service. If you're folding my laundry, like
you're folding her laundry.
Oh, you're folding my laundry.
What the fuck is happening?
Throughout this whole thing, I am in my brain, because we see so much of Rachel in like the flashbacks. This is when I'm like, okay, what the fuck happened with Rachel? Because they're step siblings. He's in love with her. What's happening? I'm mad now because I'm like, what's going on? Like, where is she?
Why are we Liam Neeson?
Literally, I am Liam Neeson.
Oh no, we're Batman. Christian Bale's Batman. Where is Rachel?
Although I'm not gonna lie, I thought she was dead.
Yeah,
that was where my mind was at for majority of the beginning of the book.
We just got through. It ends with us. I was just fully committed to the fact that, okay, she's going to fall in love with this man and he's going to be a serial killer.
Yeah.
So Rachel's dead and she is in the basement.
That's where you went with that.
And yet I was still like, he's not that bad. Leading into that, since we're talking about her, we have another flashback with Rachel, and green light is him being his little poetic ass, which I loved it. In amongst all the hormones he's feeling, he's like, my thoughts are Rachel. I can't fall in love with you, Rachel. I look at the sink. I want to look at Rachel. I breathe in the air. I want to breathe in Rachel. I close my eyes. I only see Rachel. I wash my hands. I want to touch Rachel. And I was like, oh, you little hormonal bastard. I love you.
Yeah. Hygienic.
He is like, I don't want to give Rachel COVID. We need to wash our hands for longer than 20 seconds.
Sanitizer. But can we have a moment to discuss his dad's fucked up behaviour in this as well? I realised like he later divulges to Miles the full story, but for like a good year, he has let Miles believe that he cheated on his dying mother with this woman who happens to now be his new stepmother, who he then moves into their house only 2 weeks after introducing him to her.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah, they go run off and get married. It's just, yeah, really great parenting there.
And isn't it also like they're having the sit down and they're having the talk being like, look, there is this other woman. She's knocking on the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, his dad is trash.
And I love, again, Briony mentioned it earlier about how Colleen will link the past to the present in this book. And obviously, Miles is all about Rachel in the past. And you flash to the future and Tate's like first thing is everything is Miles. And
Yep.
it's the same that he was just saying about Rachel. And I'm like, oh dear God, I know this is going to be fucking bad. I have terrible feelings. Terrible
like-
feelings.
2 competing love stories
It is.
in the one book.
Yeah.
So Tate finds out that her brother has invited Miles to Thanksgiving with their family because he has no one. And you're like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Where's his dad? Where's Lisa?
But okay. So they're in the car and they're going to Thanksgiving and she's like reading a book in the back seat type thing. And she's like stretching her feet out in between the driver and the passenger, aka her brother and Miles, and she's got her feet on the dashboard. Why is there so much feet? It's very unsettling. And they're doing this thing where like they're looking up at each other and then they're catching each other's eyes and then they're looking away and then eventually they start smiling because they're like, look, we're both just eye fucking each other now. It's great. And he goes to change gears and touches her feet. Absolutely not.
Get those piggies away from me.
No, I can't do it. I cannot abide.
There's a quote that Tate, I think, says, I'm fairly sure it's Tate, where it's like, that's how it is when a person develops an attraction towards someone. He's nowhere, then he's suddenly everywhere, whether you want him to be or not. And my heart was just like, bitch, strap in because it's going to be a bumpy ride. But then we move on to Rachel and her mother are moving in with Miles and his father. And in Miles' classic flashback fashion, he gives Rachel the better room, his room. He says he appreciates that I'm being nice to Rachel. He says I make a good brother. Dear God, Miles' dad, you had no idea.
You think so good to her.
Such a good brother.
And at this stage as well, aren't they fucking like, well, they're not fucking, but they're dating and hiding it,
Yes.
right?
They agree to like hook up for 7 months because she's going to Michigan and then he's going to flight school and it's this whole, that 7 months time they've gone on their separate journeys. But they're like, yeah, we'll do it temporarily. It's just going to be good.
Just kiss a bit.
The rules that Rachel had were no making out when they're home and no sex. And Miles was like, really? No sex? Really?
Your brother and sister. There's no sex, mate.
That should be a given. That shouldn't have to be rehashed. And then it kind of keeps going on with the unsettling shit because we go back to real time and it's Thanksgiving and Miles has cut his hand open catching a ladder because Corbin was on the ladder. I don't know. And they're like, oh my God, you're a nurse. He's cut his hand open. You can help him. And she's like, you should probably go to the hospital. And he's like, nah, I'll be fine. I'm a man. We don't have feelings. And she's stitching up his hand, like no anesthetic, just going in there with like a thread and a needle. Hope he has his tetanus shot. And the quote is, he laughs as though he knows pain, and to him this isn't pain. I pierce his skin with the needle and he doesn't even flinch. He doesn't make a sound. And my brain was like, oh no. And then while she's stitching it up, he's then like, you know what? This is arousing. Turns out the line between pain and pleasure, very thin. I'm just going to go with it. And so they have this moment where like he's leaning against her, like, and she's kind of like, is he accidentally touching me or is he intentionally touching me? And then we have this, 2 of the tips of his fingers are touching my knee. 3, I inhale again and try to focus on finishing his stitches. I can't. This is deliberate. This touch isn't an accidental graze. He's touching me because he wants to be touching me. His fingers trail around my knee and his hand slips to the back of my leg. He lays his forehead against my shoulder with a sigh and he squeezes my leg with his hand.
This is it for me. When they were touching, I was like, oh shit, it's happening. I feel the heat of his hand. Yeah, I can't fucking deal with the next bit of this fucking book, right?
They do a little bit of tonsil tango.
This is the quote that sent me. It said me, he tightens his grip on my neck and then he kills me. Or he kisses me. I can't tell which, since I'm pretty sure they would feel the same.
Which, after reading it ends with us, my heart stopped.
Yeah.
No.
I was like, she's down. That was a quick book.
I know. I seriously was like, oh, red flag.
Yeah, run. Yeah, and then afterwards, he says, I shouldn't have done that. He says, his voice is firm, hard, like metal, like a sword. I didn't mind. I say, my voice isn't firm. It's like water. It evaporates. And the difference between how Colleen describes Miles being and how she describes Tate being, Tate is always water. She's always soft, flowy, and he's always like a sword. He's always sharp, and she's water. And
I love her water, I want to say water feelings.
Yeah.
The way she describes herself and, you know, being lost in his wake and she's liquid and all that. I loved that.
But then when you know like the trauma, it's like not.
And then I was like, why are we talking about water so much? So then they go back and they act like nothing happened and they're around their family, and then later she has to touch up his hand and he just doesn't like acknowledge that anything happened. So she's being like, what the fuck? And they all go to bed. And she can like hear his bedroom door close, and he goes to the kitchen. So she like waits a little bit and she pretends. She's in her head, she's like, all right, so if I was naturally getting up and I wasn't eavesdropping and waiting for him to leave his room, how long would it take? And then she's like, okay, time, let's go.
Orange juice.
Then we're back in the kitchen. He's back making orange juice, kinky. Don't care how he's doing it. I feel like Colleen just she has a fishbowl full of beverages and she just pulls one out and goes, it's orange juice this time.
Yep.
But so they're in the kitchen and like they're having this moment being like, are we doing it? And in typical us fashion, kind of missed a small bit. At dinner, turns out Tate's brother thinks that Miles is gay because he hasn't been with anyone in like a long time, 6 years. And he's just thought that he was gay the whole time.
Although I was like, just because he hasn't been with a woman for 6 years does not mean he's gay.
No.
Very much. No, like that's exactly right. Like
Men are so simple.
They are. They're like, you did not want to touch the boob for 6 years? You must be gay.
So are they making out? Yeah, they are. In the kitchen.
Well, because they have the whole, well, I would
Orange.
fuck you.
Yeah.
And he's like, but it couldn't lead to anything. And she's like, I'd happily fuck you a lot.
Sure.
And he's like, are you sure? And she's like, yes.
he's like, no catches, no love, like no girlfriends, just nothing but sex. She's like,
I take that.
What could go wrong? This works so well in all of the movies.
But yeah, so they're doing their thing and her dad walks in on them.
Oh.
And I love how he's just like, well, you're definitely not gay.
Love that. And then he just like has a drink and just like looks at them being like,
Although it is said, I think, in this part where he says to her, don't ask about my past and never expect a future, because he's like, these are my 2 rules if we do this. And
that's so well for you before, Miles.
Oh, imagine someone saying that to you, because the first thing I'd be like, why can't I ask you about your past?
yeah, like why?
And also in this whole scene when they're in the kitchen, the man takes a sip from the woman's drink and then gives it back to her, copy paste. And then also he does the, I just don't want to like you, copy paste.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't really want anyone like taking my drink, but like spit in my mouth, but like don't touch my drink. What? Yeah.
God damn, girl. I thought I needed therapy.
You know?
Oh, the agile.
Anyway, that was my passing thought, and I thought I should share it with
You should share. Sharing's caring.
Yeah. Sorry.
We have like a flashback to Ian, who we met at the games night, and is Miles' high school best friend. So he definitely knows what happened with Rachel. That's literally it. Ian knows, in summary.
And then next, they're heading home. They're getting back in their car. Thank God there was no feet touching in this one.
Oh.
But Tate at some points goes, I need to pee. He pulls off and they find their way to this service station.
Yeah.
Like, is it on the run? Like,
yeah, it's on the run.
So Tate gets out. She's like, I just need to breathe. I just need a moment away from him. I need to breathe. And then he follows her in. He's like, do you want this? Do you want this? She's like, no. And he's like, do you want candy? She's like, okay. And then a key quote, they're like, oh, this is weird. And then he's like, oh, picking out candy or having to pretend we don't want to be in the back seat right now.
he's not wrong.
No.
Not wrong. I just really liked this part. I don't know if I can do this, Miles. I don't know if I can follow rule number 2, because I suddenly want to climb into your future more than I want to climb into the back seat with you. No, girl, no. He said there's his 2 rules, babe. You can't.
So we go from Tate being like, I don't know that I can do rule 2. And we very much segue into the abolition of rule 2.
Oh, yes, Miles and Rachel. But before we get into them shattering rule 2, as he puts it, there are some moments which are meant to be like cute moments, which just grind my gear. If there is the opposite of a love language, for me, this is it. This is the quote. I follow her around while she cooks, holding onto her, touching her, kissing her neck, pulling her away from the tasks she's trying to complete so I can feel her against me. She likes it, but she pretends not to. Can you fucking not? She's clearly busy. I'm fairly sure she's not pretending not to like it. She just doesn't like it. She's probably handling sharp objects in the kitchen or hot things. The last thing she needs is your penis grinding up behind her while she's trying to get shit done. Anyway, clearly I have a lot of inner turmoil about that subject point, but they do end up having sex in the shower and they completely obliterate rule two.
Which also, what a shit way to have sex the first time. Shower sex sucks ass. No one can convince me it's a good time. It's not.
There's a lot of manipulation. There's just...
My partner is 6'4". I am 5'6". You know how hard it is.
You'll just like put a chamois on my back and we can clean while we're
good.
So they get home and they're doing the whole let me know when your brother's asleep type thing. And I was like, this is very high school. But they do this thing where they're like, oh, what's on the agenda for today? Tate is like, your dick.
Your cock and balls.
I mean, I'm still getting whiplash because I'm still trying to figure out. He goes and he runs errands. He grabs condoms. Good boy, get protection. And then he gets more orange juice for her. Why is this man so consumed with her vitamin C intake? And how is he making it attractive?
This is where I start getting angry because I'm like, no, you said I'm not going to be a part of your future, but you're buying me orange juice. All right.
You're doing prep for my snacks.
You've already made it up a tier level, mate.
The first time they fuck, though, I loved it. The entire thing. So they're undressing, and also, again, she definitely has big titty energy because she takes off her bra and he's like, wow. And I'm like, that is some big tatters. And he goes, oh, I really wanted to make this like a special and like a good time for you. But like, if I'm not inside you in 2 seconds, this is going to be over before it starts. And I appreciate that honesty.
I was also just like, you just a little bit more foreplay though, because you will rip her vagina.
Oh yeah,
yes. There was no the tip. It was
right on in there.
The full girth.
I will say, obviously, Colleen Hoover has a trend in the 2 books of hers that I've read that she likes it hard and just right on in there. There's no, he eased in and let me settle around him. Nope, we're just through the fucking wall. It's fine. But yeah, their whole first time having sex, I loved it. I was really here for it. I was like, this is absolutely fantastic.
He goes like, again, the poetry thing, as he's thrusting, the thrust, best thrust. Thing thrust, I thrust ever felt.
Why do I feel like we're on a rowing team?
Yeah, we really are.
And thrust.
Although before they fought, they were talking and he was like, I have to go on a plane in 4 hours. And she was like, oh my God. He's like, I'm going to be away for 9 days. She was like, oh my God. And she was like, but you need to sleep. He was like, no, I want to fuck. And she said, I don't want to make you wait 9 days after getting your hopes up, aka fucking. And then he's like, being able to imagine doing this with you is in no way torture for me. I was like, you fucking cheeseball.
And then just to sprinkle that, he's being all, thoughtful. After they fuck, can you lock the door on your way out?
See ya.
I literally was like, are you fucking kidding me?
I know.
I was waiting for a thanks.
I'm obviously the only one right now, but I was like, this is within the rules, so I'm okay with it.
I mean, yes, but I was still expecting it like, that was really nice. Thank you. Like, moment.
Even if he just said fucking nothing, it would have been better than lock the door on your way out. I would have been like, you see this ass? You ain't never gonna see this ass again. Bye.
I was like, they've made boundaries, there's rules. He's been verbally telling her the whole time.
Yeah.
And even though, sometimes, they have like eye chemistry or he does little actions and whatnot, I'm like, at the end of the day, that's you reading into actions where there's no words to back it up what that means.
Yeah, look, as time goes on, he becomes a mixed potato.
So we have another joyous flashback.
Yes. And it's where Miles and Rachel are in her room now. They've locked the door. They've changed their rules. So like, we can make out as long as the door's locked. They can be here, but the door has to be locked. And one thing that I really did not love was that Rachel asked Miles, do you think the fact that we shouldn't be doing this is why we like doing it so much? I was like, bleh!
Oh no.
She's not wrong, but also yeah.
It's unsettling. And then like Miles tries to like justify it and he's like, well, we were wanting to do this before we found out we were step-siblings, so it's fine. And I'm
Before
like,
it was incest.
Yeah, for like 2 hours before
Like-
we knew.
that doesn't make it better. So then just to forget that experience, and we go back to current time. Georgia, I'm just wondering how you're going, because if laundry was a turn on, how do you feel about redecorating?
I was there. I was picking out curtains. And you know how much I like interior design. This bitch, she was like, yeah, I like this color scheme. Oh, yeah, that's nice. Oh God, you're naked. Okay, cool, fine.
Your
Um,
dick would look
furniture
great with this
shop.
backdrop.
Dick would look great with his backdrop.
I mean, when you know, and this works for both cock and curtains, so it's fine.
We have another copy and paste moment here where determining a person's character is based solely on how they treat homeless people. So in It Ends With Us, we obviously had a point of discussing Lily's dad and his attitude towards homeless people, and obviously he's an abusive prick, so his attitude towards homeless people reflects that. But then here we have Tate contemplating how people end up homeless and how to help them, and Miles proceeds to buy the homeless man a blanket when they go curtain shopping, and thus we know he is not an abusive prick. He is in fact a good guy, but with issues.
This is, again, when I started getting very mad at Miles. There's that line that he's drawn in the sand and he is zigzagging. He's like, oh, a little sprinkle of like sweet Miles that's like, oh, you can see me in your future. And then there's a sprinkle of like, I don't want anything, don't talk to me, don't ask about my past. Like when he says, if I had incredible patience, you wouldn't be with me right now. And it's like he wants to see her. He wants, and it's not just for sex. This is what he takes her fucking furniture shopping, and I'm like, that ain't sex. But I guess he bought the rug.
Wanted to christen it.
Maybe that's his excuse. But if I was Tate, I'm like, he wants to take me furniture shopping, and then he's all like, I like kissing you, Tate. And I'm like, I thought you liked fucking her, Miles. Make up your mind. Back to little Miles and Rachel, and he's talking about when his mum died, he stopped believing in God, and then he says to Rachel, and I realized just now that God gives us the ugliness so we don't take the beautiful things for granted. Just can't.
I'm gonna give you 350 pages to change your mind.
Yeah. And that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, what the fuck happened for him to switch back on exactly what he just said? Like something has gone the fuck on, and I'm not ready for that kind of trauma in my life.
Look, we go from this moment and we go into one of my favorite moments, which is the promotional car porn. They go out for like drinks and they have this whole like banter where they're at dinner and he's like, God, I want to go home because I want to go to bed. I'm so tired. And he's doing that thing where he's looking her in the eyes being like, I could sleep right now. And you know, he doesn't mean sleep. Fantastic. She's like, you know what? I'm also tired. And so they go to leave and they're walking to the car and then it starts raining and they stand in the rain and then they make out in the rain. They run back to her car, which is at her work, not a kink I want to explore, but it's fine. But it's raining so heavily that you can't see out the car. And they're like, what a great location. So they go and they're fucking in the car and they have this whole little like, this whole scene for me is like green light, go. I love it every bit, from the first kiss in the rain. And then they've got the, I don't think I've ever been this wet in my life. Me neither. And then there's like, you know, she's like, oh, don't worry about taking my bra off, it's fine. Like, you know, he's like, no, I don't want to be inside you unless I can feel you against me. Oh, okay. It's a lot of effort. And then they have this friendly competition of who can keep quiet. Jeez Louise, what do you call this sauce? Because it's spicy.
And the quote that he says during that, which is, what's wrong, Tate? You scared now? Afraid once I'm inside you, we'll both see who the loud one really is.
Miles, you dirty dog. But I'd like to ground you back down to earth, ladies. Because remember this quote, I've always kind of had a kink for Minnie Mouse. She's clearly been working on the pediatric ward and she's wearing Minnie Mouse scrubs to cheer up sick kitties. And he's like, yeah, hot.
This is where the beginning of the eye contact happens, right? This is where, because he's always said, his quote is, people are vulnerable during sex. It's easy to confuse feelings and emotions for something they aren't, especially when eye contact is involved.
Because he doesn't fucking look at her in the eye when they fuck.
No, he's very like no eye contact. And as she lowers herself down onto him in the car, they maintain the eye contact. And this is again where I'm like, Miles, I thought you said people are vulnerable and people confuse feelings. Stop looking at me. And then he obviously says the whole thing about people are vulnerable, people confuse feelings if there's eye contact involved. And she's like, what the fuck, bro? And so she goes back to the apartment and she talks to Kat. I love this quote that he says to her. He goes, love isn't always pretty. Sometimes you spend all your time hoping it'll eventually be something different, something better. Then, before you know it, you're back to square one and you lost your heart somewhere along the way.
So wise and insightful. We are back. Flashback. Jeff's pregnant. Look, speaking from experience, the first few seconds, minutes, days, and/or weeks of uncertainty when you find out you're unexpectedly pregnant is a feeling you cannot compare. Can't quite imagine how that would be at 18. It was scary enough at 25.
I mean, to his credit, old mate is not scared. He's probably a little bit scared, but he goes full prep mode. What are our options? I will support you. I would love you. I am here. He really committed to that she's going to have all my babies, like in that first chapter. So then back in like present time, we yeet Dylan. He's gone. He literally puts his hands on Tate and then doesn't take the hint that it's a no-go. And Miles is like, he's watching where Dylan's hands are on her, and his face is, again, very conflicting, but it's fine. The only things that I have issues with are in this bit is there's a little bit of a red flag. Normally I've loved every time when she's like, I'm liquid around him, I'm water, blah, 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 you know, all those. I love it. Except for when she's like, she's describing how she does whatever he wants because she's liquid, she has no spine. And I'm like, don't like that. And then they have this scene which I was absolutely obsessed with. He's like, oh, you know, you can come kick us out, you know, and go study in my place. And so she waits a bit and then she comes out and she does all this dramatic acting being like, how loud are you guys being? And I was like, chef's kiss, love it.
She goes to his apartment to study and he comes in and he tells her like, oh fuck, this pisses me off. He tells her that he just wants to kiss her for a few minutes and then she can go back to her room and rest because she hasn't had a day off since Thanksgiving, and he doesn't want her to think that all he cares about is sex. And I'm like,
I'm realizing we read these scenes very differently because you're like, oh my God, he wants her to rest. He cares about her so much. And I'm imagining him being like, you've worked so hard, as a way of being like, you know what else is hard? Magic. We should fuck. I read it all as a come on, but like also a little bit of truth in there, but him literally being like, you've worked so hard, deserves to not have to put in like any effort and be like serviced.
So you know what I read it as? I read it as, you deserve a rest. Well, let's just kiss. And then he gets too horny and he's like, now I need to fuck you. And I'm like, wait a second. I wasn't prepared enough for the sex. You told me kissing. My brain went one way. Like,
I was like, that is a conflicting statement. All right. That is a conflicting statement. I was conflicted. And then I said, in my notes, I'm in all capitals, bear in mind. That's the whole fucking point, Miles. It's just fucking sex. Stop being a fucking fuck, because the next time they fuck, he's a cunt again.
The next time they're having sex, which we've just read the flashback where Rachel was pregnant. So as soon as they're having sex and they do that thing, which everyone that has heterosexual sex has done at least once, where you go to have sex and then you're like, wait, no, we need to stop. We need to put a condom on. There was a moment and she's like, they're both sitting there and neither one wants to withdraw. No. And she's like, well, I am on the pew. And because what we just read, I was like, oh no, that's not good.
I was thinking it's going to be pregnancy trope. Oh shit. Mm-hmm. Oh fuck. Oh shit.
And I was like, oh no, like this man has already had we assume one accidental pregnancy. The whole not planning for that, you know, and so then they have this real like savage sex on the kitchen table, which I'm
all here for at the beginning of it. All here for it. Fucking on the kitchen table. I'm here for it. But then the aftermath of that fucking, which is, I don't know if it's triggered because it's without a condom, she's, I don't know, but he fucks her, comes in her, and then just leaves her, pulls out of her, leaves her there, doesn't even help her clean up, all right? Didn't even get her a wet towel.
Rag.
Did not even get her a wet towel.
That is aftercare 101.
Oh my God.
He just walks to his bedroom, slams his door behind him, and she's just left there, splayed out like a little roast chicken.
Dripping.
The stuffing.
Jesus.
This is, again, we're conflicted, all right?
We take another flashback again. We get left with that, and we're like, yes, let's go back to talking about the baby. And they're discussing baby names, and Rachel was like, Mark's like, oh, what do you want to name it if it's a girl? She's like, I want to name it Claire. And I was going, fuck. Now all I can imagine is I'm a child of an incest relationship.
So now that Claire's recovering from the fact that she's a child of incest, hypothetically, Georgia is right ropeable.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this internal monologue, which again, red flag, and again, very much made me think of It Ends With Us, being like, if any other man ever treated me like he did, it would be the one and only time. But then she goes on into this bit which made me dislike her, which was, I don't put up with the things I've seen a lot of my friends put up with. However, I find myself continuing to make excuses for him, like something could actually justify his actions last week, which that last bit, I'm like, yeah, that's fair. But it's the, I don't put up with a lot of things my friends do.
Yeah.
I'm not like
that girl.
other girls. I'm a pterodactyl.
Why a dinosaur?
My brain is just TikTok noises and I can't stop it anymore.
I'm a pterodactyl.
So we have this whole bit, right, where Tate is doing, I should be better, I should know better, I should not do this. And then they have this little moment where Miles is like, do you want to come on an errand with me?
Yeah.
After I just left my semen in your vagina.
Sorry. That's very descriptive. But yeah, she decides, yes, I do want to come on an errand with you. And he starts trying to apologize to her in the elevator, and she's not having a bar of it. So he pushes the emergency stop button to make her listen to him. And that is just screaming Grey's Anatomy season 2, Meredith and Derek.
100%.
I don't like it. Look, I was here, and then this is what happens. Again, Colleen Hoover and taking me on that journey. I'm back on the Miles train again, even though I'm like, you're a dickhead. But all right, fine, I forgive you, whatever, fine. And he goes, I don't know what this is, Tate, but I swear I didn't mean to hurt you. I just don't know what the hell I'm doing.
No shit, Miles.
And then he holds her hand in the car. And now I'm back on the Miles train again because I'm like,
we have consensual, intentional hand holding, and I am about it.
Conflicting. Basically, he's like holding her hand, and then he's like, I'm going to hurt you. And so he takes his hand away, and they're watching the airplanes. The quote is literally, you were right. If we were friends, this would have made it a lot harder. The fuck? He was holding her hand. He was apologizing. Everything was really cute. And then and that's it. All right. That's it for me from that point. Done.
Fucking hell.
Fuck off. Are you fucking joking, mate?
Anyway, then we jump back to another flashback, and Miles' dad's like, hey kids, I want to have a chat. And they're like, yeah, us too. And then the dad's like, surprise, we're married. And then Miles is like, surprised, I knocked up my new stepsister.
Surprise, we're pregnant.
Pregnancy.
The dad's like, who did it? Who did it? And Miles is like, this guy.
It was me.
I have fighting semen. Swam right to the end. Just keep swimming.
Well, that's ruined that for me.
I'm so sorry, Colleen.
But Miles' dad kicks him out.
And punches him straight in the face.
Yeah, just full on, just bang, straight in the gob.
All right, and then this is where, okay, Colleen Hoover in the writing style. This chapter ends with Rachel saying, I love you so much, Miles. And then we kickstart the next chapter. And Tate says, I miss you so much, Miles. And I swear, I'm like, Colleen, the writing, it's all linking. It's stressing me out. What has happened
Yep. There's a lot that stressed me out. What's not stressing me out is that making eye contact while they fuck, and that's all I need.
And I'm conflicted again. At the end of the last chapter, she's like, no, you're fucking with my head. You either tell me that you want something with me or drop me the fuck home. And he just drops her home. So he's like, so see ya. And so now she's like, I miss you, Miles. Oh my God. Has a little study date with her little friends that she's studying with. And one of them is a guy. And Miles sees him going into her apartment. And he's like, the fuck?
Also, copy paste. Another guy that we only meet for one chapter that has no backstory or significance of story that makes the other guy jealous enough to actually act on shit.
So obviously he gets jealous. Do we feel guilty for him? No, because he just fucked us around. The last chapter, we were all very, very annoyed.
He fucked us around, but he didn't fuck us.
No.
That's the problem.
Again, the fuck. If you're going to fuck us around, at least do it the right way. They make up. He apologizes to her.
And they fuck in her apartment for probably the first time.
Yes. And the quote, me not wanting to admit that I just let him use me again. Him not wanting to admit that this is more than just sex. I'm screaming at Tate because I'm like, all he said is that it's just sex. Like he said that. He said it, but she knows. And it's like, this is where the actions and words things come in. Because like he said eye contact, it's a thing, it's feelings. And then he uses eye contact.
Yeah.
And then
look, they're having such a good time that they don't even notice that whoops, you left your bra out in your lounge room and open the door, turns out your brother's home.
Oh no.
What has Corbin had to listen to? Because like she's talked before how she's talked about how she's bitten down on his shoulder to stop from screaming. Like she's a loud gal. There's a lot of reference in here.
And there's eye contact in this one, so you know
there's a lot of loud.
It's rough. You know it.
They weren't playing the quiet game in this one.
And like Paul Corbin, imagine he's come home and he's gone, oh my God, my sister is fucking someone that loudly. And he's got this whole thing with his friends fucking his sister. And then Miles opens her bedroom door and he's like, it's fucking you. The audacity. So they have that moment.
Basically, he gets kicked out, obviously. And she's like, I come up with my third rule now because he had 2 rules and she was like, okay, I'm going to come up with a rule.
I'll let you know
what it is. Don't know what it is yet, but I'll figure it out. And her rule just fucking ripped my soul out of my body because she said, this is fine. Like, we can just fuck, but just don't give me false hope for a future. I was like, good, Tate, set those boundaries now. Use your communication skills, my girl.
But she doesn't tell him how it is. She sets the boundary and goes, don't give me false hope. And he goes, have I done that? And she's like, She should have gone, when you looked in my eyes, when we redecorated your apartment, like
orange juice,
vitamin C.
Yeah, like she had an opportunity there to really grab it by the
and go, hey, look, these are the things you're doing that are making me think otherwise. Either way, I mean, I'm still happy with them fucking, so I'm like, okay. So we have these bits where like Corbin obviously at first is not okay with the fact that Miles and Tate are fucking. Then eventually he comes to terms with the agreement. They're very polite around him, but then like eventually Miles is like, you know what, fuck it, I'm kissing you in front of your brother. It's great. And they're having this moment. So like Tate goes and sits with Cap for a while and they catch up.
And she's trying to work out why Miles is the way he is, why he doesn't want more, all of this sort of stuff. And Cap, in all his wisdom, says, I suppose if a man lives through the ugliest side of love, he might never want to experience it again. Sometimes a man's spirit just ain't strong enough to withstand the ghost from his past. I love this man.
This man is beautiful.
But what happened?
We're about to find out.
Guys, this is the end of Ellie for this podcast.
From this point on, my brain, I have warning, strap in your titties, something is about to happen. So we have a flashback. The baby is coming.
Yes, the baby is coming. And it's another labour described by Colleen where the woman just gives birth naturally and like silently. And this is the quote, she doesn't make a sound. She just breathes. She is amazing. And I know like it is a saying, like you breathe the baby out. But there are some
I want a labour being like, she is shitting herself on the table. There is shit everywhere. Yeah. I don't know how to see my baby through all of the shit.
It may not be the most realistic description of birth. I guess because we are coming from Miles's perspective, then she probably did just breathe that baby out. Sweet moment. baby Clayton is born. But who would ever trust their partner to name their child without any prior discussion?
Oh, no, I would not trust that at all.
No.
So, the plane crash.
Oh, yeah.
My first instinct because it obviously goes straight into the home phone was ringing. And I was just like, oh no, the home phone. Anyway, a plane has crashed from the same airline that Corbin and Miles and everyone works on. And I love how Tate's like, oh my God, Corbin, I know. But then she's like, fuck, Miles. It was a very different level.
So then she hits up Miles, and Miles comes in and like looks after her and calls around and goes, it wasn't him. And then she gets a message from Corbin being like, I'm fine. Also Miles's phone. So we're all just simping over this man, essentially. Yeah. And that whole interchange, like he calls her mum and she'll call you tomorrow type thing, like checks in, does all of that. Not
more than just sex.
That's one of the things as well, because she's like, oh, I was worried that it could have been you. And his eyes soften, and you know when those eyes soften. And her quote, which I felt this personally, because this is literally my emotions throughout this book, is I'm happy because we're having fun together. I'm sad because we're having fun together. I'm angry because we're having fun together. And I felt that so personally, because that is literally my emotions throughout this book. I'm like, I love you, I hate you. I love you, I hate you.
Poor George has got whiplash.
Yeah. And then the quote at the end is, because he always leaves. He leaves because he always leaves.
And then we flash back, and little Clayton needs to get circumcised because apparently that's still a thing.
Why did we need this whole scene?
Yeah. I really do not know. It's
like talking to the baby, being like, I'm having a father son moment. Just like we talk to my baby boy about cutting his dick.
It's going to be emasculating. And also, it's not done with anesthetic, so it's going to fucking hurt. Tiny little bit cruel to put in. Anyway, I'm not going into that subject matter. But yeah, baby Clayton gets circumcised, and that's about it. That's all we need to know.
Well, we have this sexy scene in a swimming pool to distract us from that. They have this whole bit, again, with like, I'm here for the big titty energy. Me on the itty bitty titty committee, we cannot relate. We stan her. It's fine. She's like in a bikini, and this man is just like beside himself. You got a boner in his shorts. Love that. I'm so happy for her. That's the reaction you want. You want to be like, look, I'm in a bikini, and your man is like, well, I can't walk now.
Well, this is now awkward. I loved this scene. I did, because it gave me, like they're going to the rooftop pool. Oh my gosh, yes. He's like, no, you can't wear that. Oh, not out in public. Oh my gosh, my penis is erect. Oh. And they get to the rooftop pool. They're in the pool. She is slowly trying to dig out information. And the quote that she uses is, he sees me for exactly who I am, and I don't see him at all. And it's true, because he is asking her questions and she's answering them, and he is just refusing to answer anything of hers. Oh my God. And then there's oh my God. Sorry. Okay. No.
And so they go into this little group chat where he's not giving her shit, and she's crying and he's trying to comfort her, but I mean, there's not much he can say. He's saying all he's willing to say, but there's this quote, Tate, I know I'll regret saying this, but I want you to hear it. If I were capable of loving someone, it would be you.
I'm fucking slapping him.
And then, getting jolly in the pool, it's great. And she has this moment where she goes, and once again, what should have been an eye-opening conversation for me is shoved aside to make room for the only thing he's willing to give me.
His cock.
Then we get like the irrelevant daddy flashback story where we find out that Miles's dad wasn't a cheating cunt. He, in fact, decided to separate from his wife, and then had realized that he cannot separate from her while she's dying. But also he let his son think that for a year without telling him anyway. Yeah. But they have the whole moment of like, I'm proud of you. Your mother would be proud of.
I'm proud of you for knocking up your stepsister. At this stage, I'm going, oh, Tate should walk away, but she can't. And Miles should also love her enough without saying he loves her enough to walk away and not keep doing this.
Yeah, he's putting her through fucking grief.
And they have this moment where like they kiss in, like they're being all chummy in the apartment. She follows him back to his apartment, and then it changes, and they have this argument, and she goes off. She goes ham, and she unleashes. And my favorite quote from it is, "I breathe for the first time in what feels like a month. He can do what he wants with all of that. I'm done trying." She lays it down.
Because he can't even admit that he missed her.
Misses her.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's like, it's such, and she's like, friends can miss each other. Like, you don't have to miss anything else. Just my vagina, if it has to be that. Why are you making it fucking weird?
And it's in that scenario where he's just arrived home from work. He hasn't even put his suitcase in his house, and he's gone to see her, but he can't say the words.
And she's trying to say, what happened to you that made you like this? What happened? And he just has a breakdown.
Oh.
And then we find out. And when I say this moment destroyed me, but I will say I am kind of glad that this bit was a little bit far-fetched, because if it was any more realistic, I wouldn't have been able to finish the book at all. And when I say far-fetched, I sort of mean like the accident itself, the fact that it happened on the way home from the hospital, he could only save one of them, like all of that together, it just sounds like too awful to actually happen, if you get what I mean. It's too much of a tragedy. Basically what happens is they're driving home from hospital. Rachel's sitting in the back seat with Clayton, which is so fucking realistic, because I'm fairly sure every first-time mum has done that. Certainly I did. I remember leaving the hospital and thinking like, oh shit, we're responsible for this tiny human, and we're about to put him into a metal cage on wheels, and no one's checking on our car seat, and is his head okay, and what happens if he cries, and like, how do we do this? And it's such this intense feeling of love and absolute utter terror. Anyway, they're driving home from hospital. A car is coming in the other direction. He swerves to miss it, and he goes off a bridge, and they end up in the water. He can get out of his seat and his seat belt. He reaches back. Rachel can't get out of her seat, and she can't get the baby out. He only has time to save one of them. He gets Rachel free. She's telling him to get Clayton out. He doesn't have time. He passes out, and the baby dies.
Again, it's Colleen Hoover and her poetry. It's the way in which Miles has been talking throughout the entire book in his flashbacks with the poetry and the multiple, and saying things over and over again, and it's all beautifully written. And then this part, which is so beautifully tragic, like it's just, and the quote is, "Everything is water. I try to find him, I can't breathe. I try to find him, I can't breathe. I try to save him, I want to be his hero. I can't breathe, so I just stop. Silence, 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 silence."
You feel like you're sinking with the car sinking in the water.
Yeah, I can't imagine how Rachel was feeling, but like at the same time, I'm like, he didn't know initially that he couldn't save both of them. He just was trying, like the first thing he thought of was, she can swim on her own, get her out, and then I'll grab the baby.
The way he describes Rachel as ruined, it's just that would be it. That would be it, because there is literally nothing I can comprehend that could be anything worse than that happening, than losing a child. There's just nothing in this world that would ever come close to that. And for me, completely explained all of his actions in the book. He cannot let himself get close to pain like that again, because how could you ever?
Especially when he blames himself.
Yeah.
He genuinely thinks that he is the reason his son died.
Mm-hmm.
And Rachel doesn't really help.
No, she doesn't.
Rachel can't cope. Rachel is so we've got like that, we've just read that, and then we jump back to Tate's point of view, where she's watching Miles, like he's on the floor crying, and we've got these quotes where it's just, no amount of armor in the world and no wall, no matter how thick, could hide the devastation in his eyes right now. And then we have this like god awful moment.
It's
where they
awful.
They fuck the pain away, and she goes, "I let him use me to get rid of his pain." And they're having like the rough sex, but she's just taking it. She is just a participant. And then during sex, he says, "My God, Rachel." And he's looking at her. He takes a minute to realize, and then he realizes, and he's like looking at her. He's like, "Oh God, like I'm so sorry." And she just looks at him and goes, just finish, Miles.
It's
How
just
could you though after that?
the quote after, she's like, that name, it said it all. I'll never have his past because she has it. I'll never have his future because he refuses to give it to anyone who isn't her.
And like they're done, he pulls out and she walks away.
It's literally, again, we're both gasping for breath between our tears. It's intense, it's heartbreaking, it's devastating, it's ugly, it's over.
So now Colleen is just out to literally like kill us all. Because from
She's
here,
coming for murder.
she is coming for us, because we're having these scenes. We have like the present day time with these flashbacks, and right now they are like mirroring to a painful point. So you have this flashback where like it's after Clayton's died and young Miles and Rachel are trying to figure it out, and she starts like, at first he comments on the fact that like, oh, she hasn't cried today, and in any other context that might make him happy, but now he's like, oh no, that means she's feeling something else. And so she starts like kissing him and touching him, and he's like, it's too soon since after, and she was like, no,
or something.
Yeah, which, I mean, he's mindful of her post-birth condition, but she's like, no, I want this. And so they go in there having sex, and she tells me to finish. And we've just read that just finish Miles in both time periods. And then she leaves. She leaves him a note saying you can't, and it's this quote that's just, Clayton brings families together, Miles rips them apart.
So no wonder why he's feeling all sorts of guilty about the whole situation, because she basically just said to him, like, I can't look at you anymore because I need to just leave. And it's very heartbreaking, but it's apparently a really common occurrence. Like, a lot of couples do break up after going through something that traumatic because you just grieve really differently. I think she was thinking she would have rather died. She wanted to be the one to die over her baby, and he had the option to save him, and he didn't. And in hindsight, she realizes that's not the truth. But in the moment, when you're 18 as well, and you've experienced a loss like that,
it takes her 6 years to communicate. So Tate actually keeps to her boundary. She's set herself a point and she's left, and so she does leave. She moves out, and she's thinking about everything that happened between her and Miles, and she's genuinely upset. Like, she's broken. She's really heartbroken. And she has this quote where it's, the only times he wasn't brutally honest with me were the times he didn't speak, the times he looked at me and I assumed the feelings I saw in his eyes were more than what he was able to verbalize.
And so she's moving all this shit out. This is it. This is the last time she's going to be across the hall from Miles. And so she's like, you know what? I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to say my piece. I'm going to say goodbye. And she knocks on the door, and Ian answers Miles' door. And she just is like, I need to speak. I just thought I'd come and say goodbye. He gets Miles. She says goodbye. She's like, I just want to say goodbye. And all he says is, goodbye, Tate.
Oh, yes.
And I fucking threw this book. I swear to God, I was like, slam the book shut and fucking threw it.
But then he goes on to like have his own point of view in this chapter, where he's like, as much pain as she is in now, she does not know pain.
This is what I wanted. I wanted to see present time Miles' perspective, because as soon as we figured out what had happened, like, I was like, this is it. I was here for it. I wanted to know how he was feeling.
And Ian is like just a solid lad and gives him some tough fucking love. Corbin punches Miles in the face and says, well, that's been a long time coming. Love that energy. Yes. And Miles goes and talks to Cap, and we find out like Cap has known Miles for a long time,
very long time,
and knows what has happened to Miles. I mean, it's not his story to tell, but he couldn't give Tate a fucking heads up. You couldn't just go, bro has some trauma, he is not working on it, it's a problem, you're not going to be able to fix him, you're not going to crack that shell, that boy is done. And Cap has this beautiful quote that just kills my soul. See, he basically is telling Miles, you need to go and you need to have a chat that you should have had any time in the last 6 years. And he says, I know the thought of confronting your past terrifies you. It terrifies every man, but sometimes we don't do it for ourselves. We do it for the people we love more than ourselves. Man,
MVP.
That fucked me up.
Again, Justin Baldoni's Man Enough podcast. Listening to like all these men that are, you know, doing the work to be better men, talking about how the first step, you know, it might be hard for men to look at themselves, but if they can find it within themselves to extend the love they have for someone else and use that motivation.
This is the bit that killed me the most, I think. We are now in Rachel's point of view. So Miles goes to confront his past, and Rachel sees him for the first time since she left him 6 years ago after Clayton died. And the quote I have here is, "I blamed him for saving me because I had no reason left to live."
Just ripped my heart out. That's fine.
And what we find out is that she's now happily married. She's had her own little daughter. She's dealt with her trauma. She still carries the grief with her every day, but it's easier and easier to deal with while she has other things to focus on that bring her joy. And she's realizing that she should have reached out to Miles to make sure he was okay as well.
I mean, as much as I want to say she is not obligated to deal with anyone's trauma, he wasn't at fault.
No.
It would be different if he had been drunk driving, but he was not.
But that was the quote that she used. She was like, "I loved this man. I loved him with all my heart and soul. I loved him like I love Brad. I also hated him."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, but why? It wasn't his fault.
It wasn't his fault.
You both lost him that day, babe. Both of you."
And the whole like interaction of she leads Miles into the baby's room and he's visibly like, no, and shows him the baby. And then he goes and he falls to the ground.
And he's like, "Rachel, you gave him a sister." And I was crying. I was sobbing. I was
crying.
Nope, that's it. She realizes that the reason why he's come to her is because he is trying to love someone the way in which he loved her. And the quote that she says to him is, "The pain will never go away, Miles, ever. But if you let yourself love her, you'll only feel it sometimes instead of allowing it to consume your entire life."
Big oof. Miles really takes this moment and he takes Rachel's thoughts on board and he goes, "I do miss that pussy. I do.
Bro.
And those titties." And Tate comes home one day at her new apartment and he's sitting outside the door right where he started. And I mean, I both loved this line, but also was like, because I mean, he's a pilot and he was like, "I didn't fall in love with you, Tate. I flew." And I was like,
gagged.
So that's a bad joke. But also, I'm also like,
No.
Yuck.
And then, you know, we have these whole beautiful moments. He goes, "You know what, yep." And he tells her a little bit. He's like, I'm not ready to tell you the full story yet, but I will. We have a couple more moments where Miles decides that not only did he fly into love, he flew through normal checkpoints in a relationship and was like, yeet. What about marriage? Which, I mean, that whole bit where he wakes her up and he's like, "I've discovered that, you know, she's not good in the morning." I was like, fair. You should have known this from the second time you guys ever interacted.
Yeah, literally.
Slammed door in your face.
6 months later.
I loved all of this. He takes her up in the plane with Cap and they have this beautiful moment. And then he's like, "Will you move in with me?" And she's like, "Yes." And he's like, "Cool. I also have another thing. Will you marry me? Because when you know, you know." And that killed me. And then also he says this thing, "Her love is beautiful." And that just, I don't know why, that really got me.
Because it's not ugly, love.
Oh, that's why. It's right in the name.
And then she starts writing in poem style again. And I was dying. That was it for me. I was like, oh, he's in love. And then there's the whole, like, she loved him back to life. And I'm like, I'm ugly crying. It's not ugly love. It's ugly tears. Ugly fucking tears. Yeah. So I feel bad for Miles throughout the epilogue because he's basically just terrified. So what happens? We find out that Tate is pregnant and he's fucking terrified. You know, he's terrified that he won't be able to cry. They get married. He doesn't cry at their wedding. He doesn't cry when she walks down the aisle. He doesn't cry when they find out that they're pregnant. He doesn't cry when the baby's first born. He doesn't even look at it. He's like, can't, like, he's so terrified. And they call the baby girl Sam. Samuel is Cap's real name. And then he finally looks at little Sam because Tate's like, look at her. And when he holds her for the first time, he cries, he feels, and that's it, I flew. And then the end quote, which is literally, it's the beautiful moments like these that make up for the ugly love. Colleen! What?
Bad that I want a version of Jolene, but it's just Georgia being like, Colleen.
Colleen! I'm begging you, stop ripping out my soul.
Speaking of music, Taylor Swift really came out to play with the perfect song for this book, Treacherous. Stay with me. Put your lips close to mine as long as they don't touch. Out of focus, eye to eye, till the gravity is too much. And I'll do anything you say if you say it with your hands. And I'd be smart to walk away, but you're quicksand.
Oh, shit.
That's Tate. Okay, next bit. To headlights shine through the sleepless night, and I will get you and get you alone. Your name has echoed through my mind, and I just think you should know that nothing is safe is worth the drive, and I would follow you home. She does it again, guys. And then this hope is treacherous. This daydream is dangerous. This hope is treacherous, and I like it.
I'm just going to fucking die. While we're on music references, Lil Georgia, she's got some information for you. So it's at the back of the book as well, but the minute I read this book, I actually listened to it on Audible first, and it mentions that there is a musical writer, an artiste. His name is Griffin Peterson, and he created the soundtrack for one of Colleen's other books, Maybe Someday. And he did a song for Ugly Love, and it's not bad. I've got it, I've listened to it, and it's not bad. And it makes, especially when you know what happens in the book, it just
I couldn't find, again, there's not really fan art out there for this book like the other Colleen Hoover book, and to be honest, I'm kind of okay with that. I feel like fan art is more of a fantasy smutty thing. And I don't know if I could survive the fan art that accompanied this book, so it's fine. I'm happy with it.
No, but there is a trailer for the movie that never came out. So
that's right.
There was supposed to be a movie in 2016 for Ugly Love, but it ended up falling through. I'm not exactly sure what ended up happening, but the trailer is made, and I sent it in the group chat to all the girls. You can find it on YouTube. You literally just need to YouTube Ugly Love trailer and it'll come up. It's not the best trailer. It could have been a lot. I mean, it's a smutty trailer. It's a smutty trailer. There's a lot of heavy breathing, but it could have been a lot better. But he says the whole quote, there was only 2 rules, Tate, don't ask about my past and don't expect a future. So yeah, and that's good. And I think it would have been really good if it was a movie. I would have been all here for it. But if it wasn't in the right hands, I'm glad it didn't go through. Maybe it will happen sometime in the future. If it ends with us, it goes really well. You never know. You might take on this one too. But yeah, that's it. I don't really know what book. Are we back on Akatar? We're finishing Akatar, are we?
I think so. I want to say yes.
Yeah, maybe. You might see it next week. You might not.
You guys survived another episode with us. It's so exciting for you.
Shock horror. If you're still here, what are you doing?
I'm going to go and try and get therapy because I apparently need it.
But yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in again. We will see you next week. Bye.